And I would like to add my personal welcome to everybody today as we go forward. And as Sarah mentioned, we have several places in which you can receive information about mentoring and Insala. One of ours is our Twitter group. And if you can join us at iMentor, we would love to have you. We've got over 1,200 followers. It's an excellent way to get information on everything about mentoring, kind of all in one place, what you're doing. It contains slides, connections, and it's updated daily, which is one of the best things about it. In fact, what we will be doing after this webinar is that we will be actually posting the poll results from today. So if you will join us on our Twitter feed, we would love to have you, and you will see the poll results as well as everything else. Now, what we want to talk about today is mentoring for leadership development. And the kind of things we're going to talk about today are we're actually going to take you through and talk about the business reasons for leadership development and how important it is to define leadership. We're also going to talk about how mentoring can be more effective as a leadership development strategy and walk you through some very specific steps to help you launch your mentoring program for leadership development and talk about some leadership competencies and the importance of training for your mentors and mentees. And then we're going to take you through a case study that we worked through with one of our clients. But before we begin, Sarah, will you take us through our first poll, please?
Sure, Judy. Our first poll, you can select multiple answers. The first question is, what are you currently doing to develop your leaders? Are you A, we have a leadership development mentoring program in place, B, we're considering mentoring for leadership development, C, we offer training classes, D, we offer professional coaches, or E, we're not doing anything at the moment? Okay, we have over 40% voted, over 50. Okay, over 70%. Okay, looks like the voting is slowed. I'm going to close the poll. Judy, it looks like we have 67% offer training classes and 40% they consider mentoring for leadership development.
Great, glad to hear that. And that 40% in doing that. And that's very common of what we see, that when it comes to leadership development, that most of the time it is around training classes. So we want to talk about those things, and for those of you that are considering mentoring, that you can kind of put a boost to those training classes through mentoring and doing that. So now that we're talking about the focus of your leadership development, let's talk about maybe, who exactly is your audience in doing this. So Sarah, would you take us through the next poll?
Sure, Judy. Our next poll question is, which workforce generation are you having the most challenges with developing as leaders? Is it A, baby boomers about to retire, B, Gen X, not enough opportunities, C, millennials regarding retention, or D, if you have another, please write it in the chat box. Okay, we've passed 60% voted. We're almost to 75%. Okay, Judy, it looks like the voting is slowed. It looks like we have a tie with Gen X and millennials.
Okay, and this is usually what we're seeing in doing that not enough opportunities in going forward. In fact, one of the things we want to do is kind of take you through some information that we have found, and this is based on a survey that was done by Deloitte, in which they found, and looking at that, when you think about that, millennials. 66% of millennials expect to leave their organization by 2020. Now, the top area that you talked about wasn't necessarily baby boomers because you figure they're going to retire. But think about this. You've got a lot of institutional knowledge. You've got a lot of leaders. You've got a lot of baby boomers that may be leaving. You start adding to this 60% of millennials planning on leaving their organization. That's big in doing that. We also found out from that survey the absence of millennial and engagement is pressing and an important business concern, and it's getting worse. If people are planning on leaving the organization by 2020, this is something you've got to think about. So of the millennials that were surveyed, 63% are not happy with the leadership development opportunities they have in their organization. And in addition to that, what we have also found is that not only are they not happy with their leadership development and what they're doing, but we're also finding that 61% of the millennials reported benefits to getting leadership skills from mentoring and having a mentor increase expected tenure, and also they reported more loyalty when greater leadership development opportunities were offered. Now, I can tell you this particular survey, again, came from Deloitte, but within the last 6 months, ever since 2015 kind of closed, and research organizations, were getting and compiling all their 2015 data, that except for maybe a few percentage points in doing this, we're seeing the very same thing. I mean, everything that you're reading, the Towers Perrin, ATD, anything else, these figures are coming in at almost the exact same thing that we're seeing here. So one of the things we actually wanted to give you was there's a link of things that we feel are very important, and Sarah is going to put these in the chat box so you can see them, but we want to show them here. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually stop for just a moment, let you actually collect and copy those links so that you've got them for your own work. So we're just going to stop for a second. Okay, well, hopefully everybody's had a chance to actually copy those links, because we don't want anybody to miss anything as we go forward in doing this. Well, at Insala, we do some of our own research as we go forward, and whenever we do a survey, polls that we do in our webinars, we're finding that developing leaders and strengthening that succession pipeline always comes out as the most important and also the most critical of what people want to be able to do to help their organization, and mentoring can do that. When you think about your leadership development and what's going through and the discussions about building a stronger business case for leadership development, it really hits all of these areas. It hits succession planning, it hits retention, it hits engagement, and it hits the organization's culture, and what you're doing. So when you're actually doing this, one of the very first things you've got to do, though, is to actually define what leadership means within your organization. We're kind of finding that this is one of the biggest problems organizations have. In fact, I was on a call this morning, and they were using this term leadership, and yet, it can mean a lot of different things in each organization in doing that. I mean, we've got one organization, and they define leadership as creating and communicating to others a clear visual representation of desirable future events, functioning and directing as a guiding force to lead others towards accomplishment of the organization's business, and shaping performance and maximizing the ability of both human and business resources. And that's what they say. Now, we've got another organization we work with, and what they've done is they've kind of grouped a whole bunch of skills together. Make sound decisions, manage execution, think creatively, motivate and develop others, promote teamwork. And yet another organization that we work with kind of clusters several competencies together. So you can see why it's so very, very important that within your organization, it's absolutely clear, what does leadership mean? So am I going to develop one thing Am I going to develop a group of things in what I'm doing and going forward? So it's really important before you begin anything that you have a clear, communicated idea of what leadership really means inside your organization. So why is mentoring effective for leadership development? Well, the first thing is that individuals get real experience from leaders. It kind of takes it out of theory, and it lets the mentors to really help the mentee understand, I understand you may think this is what this particular skill or competency means, or this focus, but here's what it means inside of this organization's culture, especially for new individuals that may be coming into your organization. They may have experienced what leadership looks like within their previous organization or working with a previous manager. But a mentor can help the mentee really understand what leadership looks like within this organization's culture and what they're doing. It also helps the mentee to expand their professional network. One of the greatest gifts that a mentor can give to their mentee is sharing their network and what they're doing. And it also, by sharing that network and working with the mentee, helps to increase the mentee's organizational visibility. And just by doing that, that's great leadership development. In addition to that, we believe mentoring is one of the most cost-effective and time-efficient tools an organization has to develop their people, because you're using your internal resources to do this and taking it forward. Now, there's a gentleman by the name of John Maxwell, who's an American author, speaker. He's written many books that primarily focus on leadership, and this is what he says about mentoring. The best way a mentor can help prepare another leader is to expose him or her to other great people in taking this forward. So this becomes very important, and definitely why mentoring has a very positive effect on leadership development and what they're doing. So now what we're going to do is kind of walk you through specific steps to help you launch a mentoring program that will support and promote leadership development in taking this forward. These are the steps that we have found as we've gone through. Now, the very first one is make sure everybody understands what the objectives of the program is. We believe that mentoring is a business strategy. This is not just a warm, fuzzy, feel-good program. It's a business strategy. But everybody needs to be clear, not only on what leadership is, but how mentoring can be helpful. Be sure that individuals aren't caught up in historical misperceptions regarding mentoring. And one of the worst historical misperceptions is, if I'm in a mentoring program, that means I'm automatically going to get promoted. Well, you've got to get rid of this misperception right away. Mentoring isn't about promotion. It's about development. And if development helps that individual to move forward in his or her career, then that's great. But we're finding that even though that is a long misperception historically, we're still finding there's too many misperceptions that are alive and well today when it has to do with mentoring. So you've got to make sure that everybody understands this is a business strategy. Here's what we mean by leadership, and here's the objectives that we expect to accomplish by doing this. The second thing you need to do is that you need to go forward and you need to target your high potentials in doing this. Review your succession pipeline to decide who should be a part of that mentoring program. To do this, what you need to do is you need to first identify those core skills and competencies that are going to lead the organization into the future. Then you need to conduct some assessments on these individuals to determine what your talent pipeline is now. Then look at your at-risk positions, and then look at what it's going to take to actually fill those positions. And then what you might want to do is to develop various scenarios to look at possible timelines or contingencies or whatever might be happening. Now, you can do this in a couple of different ways, and there's what I used to think was a very old-fashioned way, but again, I'm finding it's still alive and well, and that's what we call the Post-it note process. And that's where you have a group of individuals that are in a room, and they've got people's names on Post-it notes, and it's kind of all put up on the wall and then things are moved around. The problem with that is many times it's based on what people think versus what they know. Because you could have a really qualified individual, but may not be the most popular or most known by some of the management that's in that room. A much more effective way to do this is by using a technology tool. And that provides you with all the data on the individuals and allows you to construct some various risk scenarios to determine the best possible outcome. This allows you to make decisions based on what you know, not just on what you guess or think. So also keep in mind, these scenarios need to be based on leadership development. So, there's other programs that you might want to do that might be peer-to-peer or other types of mentoring, but we're focusing right now on just leadership development as you go through for this particular area around succession pipeline and your business objectives of what you want to do. Now, the next thing that you need to do, qualify your mentors. Make sure that your mentors really are qualified. Mentors should be knowledgeable managers who have experience within the organization as well as the competencies needed to be a good mentor. We believe a mentor is an individual who has knowledge or experience in a given area of expertise, who's willing and able to share that knowledge with another. Too many times there's an assumption that if somebody is at a certain high job grade level or they've been with the organization for a certain period of time, they're automatically going to be a good mentor. And we're saying that's not true. The willing and able part of our definition of a mentor, that able part means that they need to have some very specific skills. Communication skills and listening skills and interpersonal skills and coaching skills and all those skills that are necessary to be successful in the role of mentor, so that they not only are an expert in a certain area, but they can share that knowledge with another individual in doing that. So it's very, very important to qualify your mentors. Don't make an assumption that anybody will be a good mentor in what they're doing. Make sure you qualify them. And then the next step you need to go through is communicate. And you've got here communicate part 1, and we're going to have communicate part 2 coming up. But in the beginning, what you really need to do is communicate, communicate, communicate. You need to have a communication plan, and you need to market your program in doing that. Talk about the benefits, promote the program, recruit your mentors, actually invite the mentees to enroll. This seems to be one of the areas that organizations feel like, if we, roll it out and build it, they will come. And that's not always true. If you don't market your campaign and have a very specific campaign and communications plan on your program, it's liable not to get the word around as you want. Make sure there's ongoing communications to senior leaders, all managers, advocates, peer stakeholders, because you want to make sure you don't miss some of those high potentials. Think about it. Every successful product or service that we all work with today is based on a strong marketing campaign as well as ongoing marketing. Your mentoring program, because the time and dollars you invest in it, you should be doing the same thing. We have one organization that we've worked with, a very large financial organization, and they rolled out the program, had the technology, and kind of felt like if it was all there, people would come. And what they found out is it didn't happen because people didn't have all the information they needed. They didn't understand everything that was involved. And there were an incredible amount of misperceptions regarding what mentoring partnerships really were and what people were going to get out of the program. So, again, you've got to launch it. You've got to have a campaign. You've got to market and advertise this program as you go through. Now, another thing that you need to do is make sure that when you match your mentors and mentees that you're doing this based on leadership competencies. And as we go through here, you need to have some kind of an application that allows matching to occur. And one of the best ways to do that is with a technology tool, either with allowing individuals to self-match or to help individuals through an administrative process of doing that. But one of the most important things we're talking about here is you've got to make sure that your application form reflects what you really want to accomplish with your leadership development. And your application form can have very specific skills and competencies on there that define what you mean by leadership development, or it can have certain areas of expertise so that people want to understand how to network better within the organization, or work-life balances, or very specific things. But you've got to define, again, what is that going to look like, and then make sure you clear way for individuals who want to be mentors to come in and be able to kind of advertise their areas of expertise and areas they want to mentor a mentee on, and that the mentees can come in, and what they can do is present their profiles and then identify what their areas of needs are, and their specific areas, not just general, I'd like to be a better leader, but getting much more specific on what that is. Now, talking about this thing about leadership competencies, these happen to be the ones that in our research came up from SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, which I know most of you are familiar with. And these happen to be 5 that they felt were very, very important to an organization around leadership. And you'll notice these happen to be different than even the ones that we talked about several slides ago in leadership. So again, so important that you define what you mean by doing this. But let's just take one of these, and let's take managing politics and influencing others, and talk about how a mentor could help a mentee on this. So one of the best ways that a mentor can provide, learning and development in this area is, again, being able to communicate to the mentee what that particular skill looks like within the organization and the organization's culture. We talked about this, a little bit before. We keep using a phrase, what it looks like, and that's going to be exactly what somebody would demonstrate, because we can't, build an impression on somebody based on what they're thinking. We only can see that what they're doing. So for the mentor to help the mentee say, here's the kind of things that you would look out for, these are the kind of things you want to demonstrate, can be very helpful in doing this, that picture that you could help somebody with. The other thing that a mentor can do is talk about these specific actions, especially if the mentor has been with the organization for a longer period of time. They probably also can give the mentee some advice on specific management levels in the organization or specific divisions in doing that. Can you imagine how helpful this could be to a mentee? Especially if they've been with another organization that might have had, actions that demonstrated these skills very differently. So understanding the actions that demonstrate this skill within this organization can really save the mentee maybe a lot of confusion and a lot of embarrassment as they go forward in what they're doing. Certain actions might have been appropriate previously, but they're not in this organization and this culture. The mentor may even ask the mentee what they've experienced regarding a particular skill or competencies up to this point, and then reinforce certain things that, yes, that's true, or, again, you might want to make some changes in what you're doing. Again, incredibly important to a mentee, and information and knowledge they can obtain from the mentor. So at this point in time, what we'd like to do is, Sarah, will you take us through our next poll so we can find out how others feel about leadership competencies?
Sure, Judy. Our next poll is, which leadership competency is most important to develop within your organization? Is it A, communicating effectively, B, managing politics and influencing others, C, setting vision and strategy, D, solving problems and making decisions, or E, valuing diversity and differences? Okay, we're almost at 60% voted. We're past 80%. Okay, looks like voting is slow. Judy, this is kind of a close one. I'm going to go ahead and close the polls now.
Okay.
So we had 28% voted for communicating effectively, followed by 25% by solving problems and making decisions, and 22% for managing politics and influencing others.
Okay. So again, what you're seeing there is, not only is there a lot of differences, but, all of you, when you were going through this, could have had some different interpretations of what each of those things meant. This is kind of interesting. It's almost split evenly 3 ways in doing that. Very, very interesting doing that. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Sarah. Okay, the next thing that we want to talk about is probably one of the areas that we feel like gets skipped in going through and setting up your mentoring program for leadership development. And you've got to make sure you provide training in what you're doing. Once you've got enough mentors and mentees, make sure they understand the role definitions, the mentoring process, the phases, so on and so forth in what they're doing. At Insala, we provide training for mentors, mentees, managers, program administrators, and we do this in workshops, we do it in webinar formats, recorded. We have some clients that, have us and we do their training for them. We've been doing it for 5 years because they know that we have the most up-to-date information around mentoring and can give, advice in that areas. We've got other organizations where, it's a master train the trainer, and we help them. But, it really comes down to why is training important and why invest in it? Well, the first reason is adequate training is important before beginning anything new, and especially when it comes to mentoring. Mentoring is a unique relationship that involves a lot of important responsibilities. You would never think about other roles that you have in your organization, other jobs. You'd never put anybody in a position that, number one, they didn't understand what was expected of them in that role. They didn't have the skills to implement that role, and you didn't give them training for that role. Why is it, though, that this is the one thing that seems to be taken for granted? Because there's some kind of an assumption that says, well, everybody knows how to be a mentor. What we find is that's not true. Remember, there's all those historical perceptions and misperceptions that exist out there. Another reason is that, it ensures the mentor get the most out of their time together. As it turns out, while individuals have the best intentions, most people really are underprepared or not prepared at all for their mentoring roles. By making the roles and responsibilities clear from the very beginning, potential for future misunderstandings is minimized, and it ensures the mentor and mentee get the most out of their time together. It contributes to a good solid foundation for the relationship, so the mentors can have the biggest impact for the mentee in doing that. In fact, receiving training and ongoing support during that mentoring partnership has shown to directly relate to how long the mentoring partnership lasts and contributes to the mentee's outcomes of learning and development in doing that. Another reason is it provides advice on helping to develop a relationship. Training provides the mentor with information about the program, how to discuss the mentee's goals with it, expectations, obligation, and gives them advice on helping to develop that mentee on whatever it is they want. Also gives them information on both the mentor and mentee how to appropriately end the partnership when that time comes. Most mentoring programs that we come across and any training that's given usually just explain the parameters of the mentoring roles, some of the history, some of the rules, or as somebody said earlier, it's kind of the administration of it more than it is. And without the type of training that allows for interaction, the mentor and mentees don't have any opportunity to really ask questions to clarify any misperceptions, to talk about any issues or concerns they have. And then additionally, training should address the needs if there's any special population that might be involved in this. So if you're looking at leadership development, you need to help your mentors and mentees understand that should be the focus of their partnership and what can happen. And again, how that looks in this organization's culture. You know, a special population may face unique challenges that might differ from partnerships the mentor or mentee have been in previously, and keeping people on track and doing that. You know, overall, the more effective the mentor and mentee are, the better the quality of the mentoring partnership overall. And most important, the more committed a mentor or mentee are, there's less likelihood of terminating the partnership prematurely in what they're doing. It's important to provide real training. You know, we keep reiterating this and how important it is. If you don't provide training, there's no way for people to ask questions, relay any concerns. I mean, even if you're a large organization, you're spread out over the globe, and you need to do that training in webinars. You know, it's distance. It's a webinar, but at least, you know, it's not face-to-face, but at least people have the chance to interact. They're interacting with each other, learning from each other's experiences, and again, the facilitator can test to make sure that there is real understanding, there aren't misperceptions, and, you know, there's consistent, correct information about mentoring is being communicated in what you're doing. So again, we feel that providing that training is very, very important in what you're doing. Okay, next step is automate with an online portal in what you're doing. And, you know, set up a portal. Allow your mentors and mentees to enroll, you know, and make it easy for them to match, whether it is going to be self-matching or administrative matching. And, you know, many times there's could be several possibilities for a given mentee. You know, there could be 3 or 4 different mentors out there that they might not even know about that could be a good match for them and give them what that they need. And so you need to have a place for that information, for some profile information, so that the mentee can kind of check this out and see, you know, what might be a good match. There needs to be information about the mentee, so that when they invite a mentor to, you know, be their mentor, that there's a way for the mentor to also, you know, look at the mentee and, you know, is this going to be a really good match? And you want to make sure you take the time and have an online portal to do that up front, and to not kind of take it for granted that it's going to happen as you're doing this. The other thing we suggest you do, especially if you're looking at beginning your mentoring program, kind of your first phase, not a pilot. I hate to use that word pilot, but not a pilot. But when you're looking at some of your first phases, make sure there's some deadlines. And the reason for that is a lot of this helps with your communication plan, letting people know here's kind of the start, here's kind of the end in doing this. Here's another reason for doing this, and this is one of the questions that comes up every time we do a webinar, and that is, how do we get more mentors to be a part of the program? Because, you know, we're having trouble getting mentors. Well, this can help in doing that. One of the historical misperceptions around mentoring is, you know, if I decide I want to be a mentor, this is a lifetime commitment. I could, you know, go on, and I just haven't got that kind of commitment. Where if you're saying to them in going forward, hey, we need you for a couple hours a month, and it will be for a period of 10 or 12 months, whatever you decide it is, some of those, you know, deadlines can be really helpful in helping the mentor to make a good decision. Also, giving them, you know, deadlines on when you start and when the matching is going to take place, and going back to some of those objectives. Here's what you can expect, and these are going to be the actions that take place. So it's real important to think about this deadlines. And then next, we want to talk about that communications part too. And going forward with that, once partners have been matched, send out communications to them. You know, give them, you know, a welcome. This is what's going to happen. And we suggest that if you've got a good technology tool This can be a big benefit to automate this process. So, as your program matures and as you're going forward, people can, receive communications at all times. They can do it on a continuous basis. It's kind of part of that, ongoing marketing of your program and so on, and it keeps things fresh that you can do, and helps the administrator not to have to always have everything on their Outlook to do or whatever it might be in doing that. And then last, we believe you've got to have feedback and you've got to evaluate your program on an ongoing basis. You've got, have continual check-ins embedded as part of the process. You want to gather feedback from both mentors and mentees by using surveys. You want to evaluate the program to ensure it's an ongoing success. Has leadership development really taken place in what you're going to be doing that? You want to, there could be a email that you have at the end of a relationship just to begin to see how the relationship go and how did it go immediately. Don't wait for 6 months to run a survey, but a way to find out in the very beginning. That's one of the things we have built into our technology tools. When a relationship ends, there's an immediate feedback piece that individuals can give feedback. So you've got immediate feedback on being able to evaluate how your program is doing. Now, when it comes to evaluating your program, we believe there really are two ways to do that. One is qualitative and the other is quantitative. Now, qualitative means you're really asking for people's opinions. It's more around what they feel in going forward. And a lot of times this is what you're using your surveys for in doing this. Your quantitative is going to be those things that you want to be able to show that this mentoring program really provided a return on investment. Did people realize the goals and objectives that they set that were around leadership development? Getting specific feedback from managers regarding performance and how it is improved. What percentage of goals and objectives that were set on the mentoring learning plans were achieved? How many individuals, individuals were matched? How many individuals looked at various ways in which they could be a part of the program again? There's a lot of ways quantitatively to be able to look at providing feedback on your program. So these are the things that we believe you need to do to have a successful mentoring program and the steps that you need to do. So kind of as a review, remember, make sure your stakeholders understand what the program is all about, that they understand what's meant by leadership. Target your high potentials. Have a way to look at who is it that we need to target for leadership development. Where are our at-risk factors and what we're going to be doing? Do we really know who's available? Do those assessments so it's not making decisions based on what you think, but it's based on targeted data of what you know. Make sure you qualify your mentors in what you're doing and don't make an assumption that just anybody could be a mentor. Communicate. Let people know about your program. Make sure that you've got that marketing campaign going on, that you really let people understand the objectives of the program and invite your mentees to join, invite your mentors to join. Make sure there's a clear communication. Make sure when you do your matching and pairing that, again, it's based on those leadership competencies and that you have included in your application process those specific leadership competencies after you've defined what they are. Provide training. And again, we talked about this in great length and how incredibly important training is. Not just emails and booklets that you hope people are going to read, but real interactive training in what you're doing. Automate with an online portal. Don't let this become an administrative nightmare of paperwork for your mentors, your mentees, and also for your administrators. Set deadlines for your first program so that people really can see start to finish what's going on, and it helps the program administrator to be able to track and report results. Communicate as you're going forward and make sure people on an ongoing basis that who they're matched with, communicate tips and tools on an ongoing basis to your audience, and then make sure you provide feedback and evaluate what's going on. So one of the last things we want to do is take you quickly through a case study that we went through. And I happen to be in the room. This is the actual client's own words that were going on. And the senior manager said, yesterday we thought the future was a long way off. Now it's here and we're not ready. We don't have the leaders and our high potentials developed. We can't let that happen again. We need to develop our leaders and high potentials before our competition does. And again, this was an absolute, this was a real type of quote that came from the client. So here's what we did to help them with that, to make sure that didn't happen, through that. We conducted a strategic planning workshop, and we have a workshop called MORE, Mentoring Organizational Readiness and Effectiveness. It was important to do that so that we could identify the very specific organizational objectives and measurements for the program. Get this set up. This is setting up your process. Make sure that all the elements that we know make a program successful were identified. And then we also need to go through and identify where mentoring was going on and what that might look like and how to bring everybody on board, because there were little pockets of what they called mentoring were going on throughout the organization. Information process was provided to senior management because they were going through and recommending who should be identified as a mentor or a mentee, and so we wanted to make sure they had the right criteria and they weren't just making assumptions based on somebody that had been with the organization a long time or somebody they thought was good, but what it was to really qualify and be a mentor and a mentee in doing that. We had a major kickoff session that was conducted, and then we definitely provided training for mentors and mentees, also for the managers going through that. The outcome was senior management was pleased with the immediate initial evaluations of the training that everybody went through. Feedback from the mentors and mentees during that evaluation set indicated success. In fact, we got a comment from the mentors that said they wish the training had actually been a little longer. And this was really interesting because these mentors were very senior level individuals, and the L&D function was afraid we couldn't even get them for a half day to get them through training, and yet they came through and said this was really good. We think it should have been even longer. After 6 months, senior management communicated that they were seeing ongoing success, and there was no doubt there was funding for the next phase. And then those other parts of the organization that had those pockets of mentoring, the other parts of the organization came in and said they wanted to implement the same process. So there was some of the outcomes. So Sarah, would you take us through our last poll and talk about measurements?
Sure, Judy. Our last poll is, how have you measured leadership development in the past? Is it A, assessment results such as 360s or skills and competencies assessments? B, manager feedback? C, promotion? D, retention? Or E, survey feedback results? So it looks like we are passing 20% and passing 30%. We're almost halfway participation. So far, survey feedback results is leading the charge with 37%. Okay, we've got to 61%, and it looks like voting is slowing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. So Judy, it looks like we had survey feedback results with 40%, followed by assessment results with 25%, and manager feedback with 20%.
Okay. Yeah, surveys are normally the most common way for organizations to get some of that. But we hope that your survey is not just how people feel, but do they, what were some specific quantifiable ways you can get in that survey? So what we want to do to kind of close our session is, first of all, we want to answer your questions that you have. Also, if you have any questions or need any additional information, we'd like for you to contact us. And then another quote from our John Maxwell. One of the greatest values of mentors is the ability to see ahead what others cannot see to help them navigate a course to their destination in doing that. So at this point in time, Sarah, do we have any questions?
We do. We have one question that is, how long would it take to implement an effective mentor program from scratch?
Great question. in doing that, and I'm not going to dodge it. I'll just have to put in some criteria. First of all, it depends on the size of your organization, the size of what you want to kick off with in doing that, or what we call phase one. First piece of advice is if you're kicking off a new program, don't call it a pilot. We suggest that just due to the way mentoring is perceived and so on, and the way the term pilot is perceived, that, if you call it phase one, and so if individuals that wanted to be a part of the program were not able to, kind of indicates there's going to be a phase two and they can be a part of that. But, your first phase, you want it to be something that you can manage and that you can make sure you're doing everything right from the beginning. One of the biggest things that we find, and that's why we really encourage the strategic planning workshop to organizations, is there seems to be a perception that you can just roll out the program. Let's just advertise it and get it going. And then they find, we really had some problems with that. And we've done some previous webinars on this, and what they've had to do is to start over in doing this, and that causes a problem. It really makes the mentoring program look like it really isn't all that important. So we suggest that you start out with a very strong first program out of the box, and not kind of just, we'll see how it goes. So going back to answering that question, I would say that it is possible to set up a mentoring program and have it in the kickoff, which is including the matching and pairing and the training and everything, within somewhere around 3 to 4 months. It's all going to depend on the size of your program, and I would say 3 to 4 months after you have gone through the strategic planning process to make sure you do have everything in place to ensure it being successful. I have seen mentoring programs roll out as quickly as 2 months to get started, but I would say you're looking at an average of somewhere around 4 months to get them going. You can, again, many times you can get the program, up and running and going with a smaller group, and then add your technology in as you're going through. There's several different ways, but like I said, I've seen it in as little as 2, and I'd say, average is somewhere around 4 doing that. Great question.
Well, Judy, our next question sent in was, my current program is currently at 20 mentors, mentees. What is a good number when a company has a program? My company is looking to expanding this number.
Not knowing the size of your organization, that's a little. We have found an average when somebody says, if you've got 5,000 employees, don't expect everybody to be a part of the mentoring program. I mean, it's just, for some people, this is what they want to do. For others, it doesn't. 20 is a great, somewhere around 20, 25 pairs to start a program is a really great number to work with. It allows you to do what you need to do. It allows you to get your arms around it, especially if it's your first program, and to track it, do ongoing feedback and so on and so forth. In building your program for the next phase of what you want to do, I can't give you a maximum number. Normally, again, we've found that somewhere between 23 and 26% of the population is normally what you will find in a mentoring program. Again, if you've got 5,000 employees, don't expect every single solitary person to want to be a part of a mentoring partnership. And also, it also has to do with what's the objective of your program. I mean, we've been talking here about leadership development, and that's going to be probably a smaller number for the entire organization. It could be a little less than 23 or 26% of your population. If you're talking about, skill-based mentoring or peer-to-peer mentoring, numbers might be a little higher in doing that. So it also has to do with what the focus of your mentoring program is about. If you'd like to send me some information, a little more in-depth information about your program, I can possibly provide you with a little more targeted answer.
Okay, Judy, we have another question. It is, how would you go about getting senior leadership buy-in for a large global organization that doesn't have a learning culture?
The best way to get senior management and to buy into mentoring is to position it as a business strategy. Even senior management looks at mentoring as well. That's a really nice, warm, fuzzy, nice to have. If you put it as a business strategy and an incredibly effective way for people to develop, and why, and again, it depends on what are your business objectives in doing that. But if you position it as a business strategy, if you have very specific organizational goals and objectives that mentoring is going to support, and have that, if you've got measurements in place, then that really helps to make it and position it as a business objective. And those measurements saying not just qualitative but also quantitative, this is what we expect to get out of it, make sure those are realistic in what you're doing. That is the very best way. And also in presenting it to senior management, make sure you've got a good solid process in place. We're going to do this first. This is how we're going to qualify mentors. This is how we're going to match. This is how we're going to qualify our mentees. We are going to provide training to make sure everyone's successful. All the things that we've talked about in these 10 steps. If you present a very specific plan, and again, those are the kind of things we do in our MORE workshop, our strategic planning workshop, is making sure that your mentoring program, your mentoring initiative is positioned as a business strategy in what you do.
All right, Judy, are you ready for the next question?
Yes.
How do you avoid mentor overload? Everyone wants to choose the same mentor, someone with visibility and high positions.
Best way to do that is to make sure your mentees are very specific about what they want to get out of the program. Because many times, we talked about in the very beginning, you have got to make sure that people are not looking at mentoring that they're going to get promoted. I'm going to get on somebody's coattails and they will sponsor and promote me forward. So that usually is one of the worst things that happens in doing that. But if you've got somebody, who is a mentor and everybody wants the same one, first of all, again, you've got to set your program up. Are you going to allow your mentors to have one mentee, two mentees? Two's really plenty in doing that. And that's another way. When you are communicating the goals and objectives of your program, they need to understand that, this is, each mentor is only going to have one mentee. So if somebody doesn't get that individual as a mentee, it's because somebody else has. The other way that's a really great way to do that is having your technology tool. Because when you set up your program and your technology tool, you can say these, mentors can have one or two mentees, mentees can have one or two mentors in doing that. And then when your mentor has been chosen and accepted a mentoring partnership with some, they're no longer in the mentoring pool. So they're not even going to be kind of listed there in doing that. That's another great way. We have an organization that we've been working with for about 5 years, and that's one of the things that comes up, and that's how they handle it. They've got, our technology tool, the individual, mentor is there and very popular. They allow their mentors to have two mentees, and they're very clear. When they go through their information program and they take the mentees through training, one of the things they say is, look, don't wait until, next week to go try and find a mentor. We suggest you do this right away. Your mentors are set up. They've been trained. They've been qualified. They're in this database. It's first come, first serve. But that's one of the best ways to do it.
Judy, do you think you have time for one more quick question?
Yeah, I think we do.
Do you have self-paced online training available for mentors and mentees?
We do not. And here's the reason for that. It doesn't allow for interaction to be doing that. What we have done in the past is that we've worked with an organization and we've done webinar training for mentors and mentees, and we've recorded it. And when we do our webinars, they're actually in different parts, because I don't believe in having a webinar that's any more than 90 minutes in training. And we do exercises too, and make sure there's interactions. I ask questions and so on. I want to make sure people aren't looking at their emails while we're going through. So I call on people, those kind of things. So we do part one and we do part two. with one organization, there's 3 parts in what we do. But we record the sessions, and then we go through and review them with a person within the organization, make any changes that need to be made, and then that is a recording. Can be online. The reason that's much more effective is that it at least allows the individuals to hear interaction of different people and different questions that are going to be coming up, and making sure their questions. And then at the end of the recording, what we do is we ask them for feedback. And part of that feedback is specifically any other questions they may have, so that those can be answered, and again, in a very consistent format. We found with organizations that have got online learning that people still have questions. If they don't get some of those answers right away, they'll make up their own answers. We have just found that interaction and actually, hearing people talking and asking questions and doing those kind of things is a little more effective. So that's why we do workshops, webinars, or recordings of webinars that the organization can use on an ongoing basis, plus questions and testing at the end. Great questions today. Really great questions.
All right. Well, it looks like we're about out of time. Judy, do you have any final thoughts?
No, we just, again, I would like to encourage everybody to, go to our mentoringtalent.com website and what you're doing, and also to make sure that you follow us on our tweets in going forward at, I'm mentoring. And if you are interested in the results of the polls of today, you can do that. Also, if you join our LinkedIn group, our Mentoring Thought Leaders Club, you'll get a copy of today's webinar and recording and doing that. So if you have any other questions, please feel free at any time to send them to us, and we'll be glad to talk to you about it. And I would like for everybody to have a really great day, and good luck with your leadership development.